There's a night that happened in the Ngorongoro region of Tanzania that most people have never heard about. And when you understand what actually took place during those hours of darkness, when you understand the numbers involved and the behavior involved and the biology involved and what it meant for every animal present, you will not be able to think about predator and prey the same way again. 40 hyenas, 40, moving together, coordinating in the dark, drawn to a single point in the landscape where a pride of lions had settled for the night, not stumbling into them accidentally, not passing through the same territory and finding themselves in proximity, moving toward them, surrounding them, holding the perimeter, and then waiting. What unfolded over the next several hours was not a skirmish. It was not a chase. It was something more deliberate and more frightening than that, and it tells us something about intelligence and social structure and the nature of power in the wild that goes far deeper than the simple story of predators competing for food. Subscribe right now if you want to understand the natural world the way it actually works, not the cleaned-up version, not the highlight reel, but the real thing, the complicated thing, the thing that keeps you up at night thinking about it. Let's go. To understand what happened on that specific night, we need to understand what a night in the Ngorongoro crater actually is, because the setting is not incidental. The geography of this place is not a backdrop. It is a participant. The Ngorongoro crater is the largest intact volcanic caldera on Earth that is not filled with water. It is roughly 19 kilometers across, and its walls rise up to 600 meters above the floor. A near-perfect bowl of ancient volcanic origin that contains within its walls one of the densest and most spectacular concentrations of wildlife anywhere on the planet. The crater floor is about 260 square kilometers of grassland and woodland and swamp and lake. And into that relatively contained space evolution has packed lions and elephants and buffalo and wildebeest and zebra and hyenas and leopards and cheetahs and black rhinoceros, and dozens of other species in numbers that are extraordinary by any standard. The containment is the key thing. The animals of the Ngorongoro crater are not entirely trapped in the sense that they can climb the walls, and many of them do so seasonally, but the crater functions as a kind of ecological pressure cooker. The prey animals cannot disperse far enough to reduce predation pressure. The predators cannot range widely enough to find new territories without conflict. Everything is concentrated. Every interaction is intensified. Every relationship between species is pushed to a level of density and frequency that produces behavior you simply would not see in an open landscape where dispersal was an option. The lion population of the Ngorongoro crater is well studied and well documented. For decades, researchers have tracked the prides that live on the crater floor, nomming individuals, mapping territories, recording births and deaths and coalitions and conflicts. What they have found, consistently, is that the lions of Ngorongoro live under a level of predator pressure that is unusual even by the standards of lion research in East Africa, and the primary source of that pressure is the same species that was gathering on that particular night. Crocuta crocuta, the spotted hyena. And before we go any further into what happened that night, we need to spend some time with this animal, because the version of the hyena that most people carry in their heads is so far from the reality that it constitutes a genuine misunderstanding of one of the most sophisticated social animals that has ever evolved on this planet. The spotted hyena is not a scavenger. This is the foundational misunderstanding, the one that everything else about the animal's bad reputation flows from. The spotted hyena is an apex predator, a hunter of extraordinary capability and efficiency, and in most ecosystems where both lions and hyenas are present, the hyenas kill more of their own food than the lions do. In the Ngorongoro crater specifically, studies have shown that spotted hyenas hunt and kill the vast majority of what they eat. The lion is the one that steals from the hyena far more often than the reverse, though the reverse certainly happens too, and is more dramatic when it does, and therefore more memorable to human observers who often draw the wrong conclusion from a single observed interaction. The reason for the confusion is that hyenas do scavenge. They scavenge brilliantly and efficiently and without any apparent shame, in the same way that hyenas do everything, which is to say with a kind of direct, unsentimental pragmatism that is actually admirable if you can get past the aesthetics of it. But so do lions. So does every large predator given the opportunity. A free meal is a free meal. The ecological category of obligate scavenger, an animal that only eats what it finds already dead, does not exist among large vertebrates. Everything hunts, everything scavenges. The question is the proportion, and for hyenas the proportion is overwhelmingly in favor of hunting. The clan is the unit that matters for understanding hyena society. and the clans of the Ngorongoro crater are among the largest and most studied hyena clans in the world. A clan can contain anywhere from a few dozen to over 100 individuals, and it functions as a complex social unit with a dominance hierarchy, territorial boundaries, communication systems, and collective behaviors that are the product of millions of years of social evolution. Hyena society is female-dominated. The females are larger than the males, which is unusual in mammals and particularly in large carnivores, and they outrank all adult males in the social hierarchy. A high-ranking female and her daughters and granddaughters form the social core of the clan, the dominant lineage around which everything else organizes. Low-ranking females fall below them. Adult males who were born into the clan typically disperse when they mature, leaving to join other clans where they will spend years at the bottom of the social hierarchy, working their way up gradually, dependent on the goodwill of female clan members for their access to food and social participation. The intelligence required to navigate this social world is extraordinary. Every individual in a clan needs to track the social status of every other individual, to understand the alliance networks that shape who supports whom in conflicts, to read the moods and intentions of dozens of other minds operating simultaneously in the same social space. The cognitive demands of this are not trivial. They are, researchers believe, a significant driver of the hyena's unusually large brain relative to its body size. A brain that in neurological tests of problem-solving and social learning has repeatedly outperformed animals with much better reputations for intelligence. Hyenas communicate through a repertoire of sounds that is startlingly complex. The whoop, the long-distance call that carries for kilometers across the African night, is not the random noise it might seem to a human listener. It conveys identity, the specific signature of the individual calling. It conveys social status. It conveys location. It is, researchers believe, something in the nature of a directed message, a communication aimed at specific recipients who can be identified by the caller and who will respond in ways shaped by their particular relationship with that caller. The laugh, the giggle that most people associate with hyenas, and that has given them their reputation as sinister, cackling scavengers, is not laughter in any sense related to human laughter. It is a social signal, primarily produced during interactions with dominant individuals or during states of high excitement and anxiety, and it carries information about the identity and status and emotional state of the animal producing it. When 40 hyenas assembled in the darkness around a sleeping pride on that particular night, they were not a mob. They were a coordinated social group, operating within a structure of communication and hierarchy and collective decision-making that had been refined over thousands of generations. What was about to happen was not chaos. It was, in its own terms, organized. Now let us talk about the lions they surrounded. The pride at the center of this story was a well-established group, as lion prides in the Ngorongoro tend to be. Lion prides in this crater have existed for decades as recognized social units, the membership changing through births and deaths and the expulsion of young males and the occasional arrival of new coalitions of males challenging for control. But the core female lineages persisting for generations in the same territory. The females of a pride are related, mothers and daughters and sisters and aunts, connected by bonds of kinship and long familiarity that shape everything about how they interact with each other and with the world beyond their group. The pride that night would have included adult females, their cubs of various ages, and likely a coalition of adult males, the dominant males who had control of the pride at that time. The composition matters because it determines the defensive resources available when things go wrong in the dark. Lions sleep a great deal. This is not laziness. It is energy management of a sophisticated kind. A large carnivore that requires 15 to 20 pounds of meat per day to maintain condition cannot afford to burn energy unnecessarily. The metabolic cost of constant activity at the size of an adult lion is enormous, and the hunts themselves are expensive, requiring explosive bursts of speed and the wrestling of prey that can be larger than the lion and extremely dangerous. So lions sleep, sometimes 20 hours a day. They sleep in ways that look entirely abandoned, entirely relaxed, limbs sprawled and eyes closed and breathing slow, and this is genuine sleep, not alert rest, genuine deep unconsciousness in the middle of a landscape full of things that would like to see them dead. But they are not entirely vulnerable when they sleep. A sleeping pride is not a helpless pride. The adults shift in and out of sleep in a way that means at any given moment some individuals are likely to be more alert than others. The sensory systems of a lion are, even in rest, operating at a level that will register significant disturbance, the scent of a large number of rival predators being among the most significant disturbances there is. And the social organization of a pride means that when one animal comes alert, the information travels. The cubs are the most vulnerable element in this equation. Always, cubs younger than a year old are genuinely helpless in a serious conflict, unable to run fast enough to escape, unable to fight, dependent entirely on the adults for their survival. The females of a pride are intensely protective of cubs, and the presence of cubs is itself a driver of how fiercely a pride will fight when threatened. There is almost nothing that will cause an adult female lion to fight more desperately than a threat to cubs. The night in question began as nights on the Ngorongoro crater floor typically begin, which is to say it began as the sun dropped behind the crater rim and the extraordinary darkness of the African wilds settled over the landscape. This is a darkness that most people in the modern world have never experienced. There is no ambient light from distant cities. There is no glow on the horizon. When there is no moon, the darkness is total, and there was on that particular night either no moon or very little of one, which matters because it changes the tactical situation for every animal involved. Hyenas are superbly adapted to operate in darkness. Their eyes are not dramatically superior to lion eyes in terms of low-light performance, but their other senses, particularly their hearing and their ability to detect and interpret scent, operate in the dark as effectively as in daylight. And crucially, their social coordination, the communication through calls and scent marking and body language that holds a clan together and directs collective behavior, does not require vision. A group of hyenas can coordinate in complete darkness in ways that a group of lions cannot quite match. The gathering happened at the edge of the area where the pride was resting, not all at once because that would have triggered immediate response. Gradually, individual hyenas and small groups converging from different directions over what might have been an hour or more of careful, low-profile movement. The spotted hyena moves quietly when it chooses to. People who have studied them at night are consistently surprised by how silently an animal of this size can move when it is not vocalizing, how effectively it can cover ground without announcing itself. The number 40 is significant not just as a large number, but as a number that represents something specific in the mathematics of interpreter conflict. A single adult male lion is an extraordinarily formidable opponent. He weighs close to 200 kilograms. He is muscled in a way that is almost incomprehensible until you are close to one. His jaw produces one of the strongest bite forces of any land carnivore on Earth. His forepaws, deployed with his full body weight behind them, are capable of killing an animal the size of a zebra with a single blow. One lion versus one hyena is not a contest. The lion wins. But the relationship between large carnivores in conflict is not arithmetic. It does not scale in a simple linear way. Two hyenas versus one lion is already a much more complex situation because the hyenas can split the lion's attention, attack from multiple angles simultaneously, exploit the gaps in its defensive capability that arise when it is focused on one direction. 4 hyenas against one lion begins to approach genuine danger for the lion, because the number of simultaneous threats is starting to exceed what any one animal can track and respond to effectively. 8 hyenas against one lion is a situation where, under most conditions, the lion will be driven away or seriously injured. 40 hyenas against a pride is a mathematical problem of a completely different order. The pride has multiple adult defenders. But 40 coordinated attackers coming from all directions simultaneously, producing the extraordinary chorus of whoops and giggles and social calls that a clan in full collective excitement generates. A sound that is viscerally terrifying even to human observers who are sitting in a vehicle with a door between them and it, represents an overwhelming tactical challenge. The lions woke up to this, not to 40 hyenas already on top of them because that would likely have been immediately and catastrophically violent. They woke up to 40 hyenas surrounding them, close but not attacking, not yet, holding a perimeter. And this is the detail that is most interesting to the researchers who study these interactions, because the holding of the perimeter without immediately attacking is not simple predatory behavior. It is something more complicated than that. Hyenas do not always want to fight lions. Even 40 hyenas do not necessarily want the injuries that come with fighting a full pride of lions, because injuries to a wild predator are dangerous in ways that go beyond the injury itself. A hyena with a broken leg or a deep gash from a lion's dukla is a hyena whose hunting efficiency is compromised, whose ability to compete within its own clan hierarchy is reduced, whose survival prospects have dropped. The calculus of confrontation for a hyena is not just about whether it can win, it is about what winning costs. And 40 hyenas surrounding a sleeping pride is a demonstration of power and numerical advantage designed, on some level, to force a capitulation that does not require fighting. What the hyenas wanted that night was most likely food. This is almost always what interpreter conflicts are fundamentally about. Not territory in the abstract, not dominance in the abstract, but the resources that territory contains and that dominance provides access to. The lions had fed recently, or were in an area that the hyenas considered their foraging ground, or there was a carcass nearby that the hyenas had killed and lost to the lions. The pattern of theft that runs in both directions between these species, but that, in the Ngorongoro crater, runs slightly more often in the direction of lions taking from hyenas than the popular imagination suggests. The sounds that erupted when the perimeter was established would have been audible for kilometers. The hyena clan in collective vocal mode is one of the loudest and most acoustically complex sound events in the African wild. Dozens of individuals producing whoops that rise and fall in pitch, interspersed with the giggling sounds and the low groans and the rapid whoops that signal high excitement. All of this happening simultaneously and creating an acoustic environment that is genuinely disorienting even when you understand intellectually what is producing it. For a lion waking from deep sleep to find itself inside this wall of sound coming from all directions, the immediate sensory experience must be something very close to what we would describe as overwhelming. The cubs would have moved immediately toward the adult females. This is instinct operating at its most fundamental, the small and vulnerable moving toward the large and protective in the face of threat. And the adult females would have positioned themselves around the cubs, orienting outward toward the sound, gathering the cubs into the center of whatever defensive formation the pride was capable of assembling in the confusion and darkness of that initial moment. The adult males, if the pride had them present that night, would have come to their feet with a different kind of response. The adult male lion in a threat situation is not simply a larger version of the female. He is a different defensive instrument physically and behaviorally. His mane, which is not merely ornamental but provides genuine protection to his throat and neck during fights, his greater mass, and his behavioral tendency to move forward rather than hold position make him the leading edge of a pride's defensive capability in exactly the kind of confrontation that was now developing. But here's a complication that shapes everything that follows on nights like this one, and it is a complication that is poorly understood even by people who follow lion conservation and lion behavior closely. The males of a pride, the dominant coalition that controls the pride at any given time, are not always present with the pride at night. Male lions range more widely than females. They patrol territory boundaries. They monitor the movements of rival males. They are sometimes kilometers away from the females and cubs they are nominally protecting, out in the darkness doing the work of territorial maintenance that is part of their role in the pride's social system. On the night when 40 hyenas gathered, the question of how many adult males were present and how many were elsewhere in the territory is one that shapes the entire subsequent story. A pride with 2 or 3 large adult males present when the hyenas arrive is in a fundamentally different defensive situation than the same pride with the males away. The difference is not just in fighting power, though it is certainly that. It is in the deterrent effect, the calculation the hyenas have to make about whether pressing the confrontation is worth the cost. The response of the pride in those first minutes tells the story of the defensive resources they had available. There is a particular sound that a lion makes in response to hyena pressure at close range, a sound distinct from the territorial roar and distinct from the sound a lion makes when hunting. It is a guttural percussive sound, produced with less volume than a full roar but with an immediacy and a physicality to it that communicates something extremely direct. It is the sound of a large carnivore telling another large carnivore that it is aware of the threat and is prepared to respond to it. That sound, coming from multiple adult lions, overlapping, directional, each response oriented toward the nearest pressure in the hyena perimeter, is the first concrete information the pride has communicated to the clan about what they are dealing with. The hyenas heard it. Of course they heard it. And what happened in the hyena perimeter after that first vocal exchange from the lions is itself a revelation about hyena social cognition. The clan did not simply continue its advance. It adjusted. There was a period of what researchers, when they observe these interactions and are able to piece together the behavioral sequence, can only describe as assessment. The clan was, in some functional sense, evaluating the information it had received. How many voices? Where were they coming from? Were there adult males in that number or only females? The whooping and giggling of the clan continued, serving its communication function, sharing information about the state of excitement and the direction of pressure among 40 individuals who could not all see each other in the darkness. What the hyena perimeter does in response to this assessment determines everything about how the next several hours unfold. If the assessment produces a conclusion that the pride's defensive capability is limited, that the number of adult lions is small, that the cubs are accessible and the adults are manageable, then the hyenas press inward and the confrontation becomes violent. If the assessment produces a conclusion that the pride is larger or more formidable than initially estimated, then the clan modifies its approach. It does not necessarily retreat. It may continue to hold the perimeter, applying pressure through presence and sound, waiting for something to change, an adult lion that steps away, a cub that breaks from the group, an opportunity that did not exist in the first moments but might develop over time. Because this is the other thing that 40 hyenas surrounding a pride through the night is accomplishing beyond the immediate pressure. It is tiring the lions. A pride held in defensive formation for hours, unable to sleep, unable to move freely within its own territory, burning energy that should be going to rest and recovery, responding to continuous pressure from all directions simultaneously, is a pride that is gradually weakening. The hyenas do not need to rush. They have the numbers to maintain the perimeter in shifts, some individuals resting while others maintain the pressure, rotating in ways that mean the collective energy of the clan is not depleted at the same rate as the energy of the surrounded pride. This is patient. This is strategic in a way that requires holding a collective purpose over a time scale that goes beyond simple reactive predation. This is a clan that has learned, through experience, that a large prey doesn't always need to be rushed, that a defensive formation can be broken if you simply refuse to let it rest. The adult females of the pride are making calculations of their own in this darkness, calculations that are not conscious in the way human strategic thinking is conscious, but that are no less real for that. How many hyenas are to the north, more or fewer than to the south? Is there a direction where the perimeter is thinner, where a charge would break the encirclement and open a path? What are the cubs capable of in terms of speed and endurance if it comes to running? Where in this landscape is the nearest refuge, a copy, an area of dense vegetation, a change in terrain that would favor the lion's greater individual strength over the hyena's superior numbers? Because the option of running exists, it is not surrender in any meaningful sense. It is tactical repositioning, a response to numerical disadvantage that every animal capable of assessing numbers makes under the right conditions. A pride of lions with cubs being pressured by 40 hyenas is not in a situation where fighting to the last is necessarily the correct survival strategy. If there is a direction to run and the running can be accomplished with the cubs intact, running is entirely rational. But running from 40 hyenas with cubs in tow is its own nightmare. Hyenas are fast runners. They can sustain a canter of around 50 to 60 kilometers per hour for extended distances in a way that lions, built for explosive short sprints rather than endurance, cannot match over ground. A lion can outrun a hyena in a dead sprint over 200 meters. Over a kilometer, the hyena's endurance gives it an advantage. And a cub, particularly a young cub, cannot run at adult speed at all. The geometry of a potential breakout therefore depends entirely on how the hyenas have distributed themselves around the perimeter, and whether there is a direction from which the pride could escape without the fleeing animals being run down before they reach whatever safety they are aiming for. This is the existential geometry of the situation, and it is being processed, through sensation and instinct and immediate experience, by every lion in the center of that ring. The adult males, if they were present in the pride that night, would at some point have made a different kind of decision. There is a behavior that researchers have documented in adult male lions during hyena confrontations that is distinct from the female's primary orientation toward the cubs and the defensive group. Adult males charge, not always, not recklessly. But under the right conditions, with the right targets presenting themselves, an adult male lion will launch a direct, full-commitment charge into the hyena perimeter. A charge that is not designed to pursue and kill a single hyena but to break the perimeter's cohesion, to send the nearest hyenas scrambling backward, to create a moment of disorganization in the encircling group that the rest of the pride might exploit. A male lion charging into a group of hyenas is one of the most viscerally dramatic events that the African savanna produces. The size of the male, the speed of the charge, the sound, the commitment of it, the absolute fearlessness that it conveys, these things have an effect on the hyenas in his path that goes beyond the immediate physical danger he represents. It is a demonstration of something. A demonstration of the kind of force that 40 hyenas might be able to overwhelm collectively, but that, individually, none of them wants to be in the way of. Hyenas scatter from a charging male lion, not in permanent retreat, not in defeat, but in immediate self-preserving dispersal that breaks the local coherence of the perimeter at the point of the charge. And in that broken moment, in the seconds when the hyenas who scattered are regrouping and the male is turned around, there is a window. The females know this window. They have, across their lifetimes and across the generations of their pride, experienced this dynamic before. The window is the moment the pride can move. But moving means committing. Moving means the cubs are in motion, which makes them vulnerable. Moving means the pride has to pick a direction and maintain it through whatever response the hyena clan produces when they realize the pride is attempting to break out. Moving means every lion, adult, and cub has to be on the right side of the decision simultaneously, because a pride that fragments under pressure, with some animals going one direction and others going another, is a pride that loses everything that collective defense was providing. The coordination required for a breakout from a hyena encirclement is itself a remarkable thing. Lions communicate through sound and body language, and through the long familiarity of individuals who have lived together for years and know each other's intentions from subtle cues. The females of a pride can read each other in ways that have been calibrated by years of shared experience, years of hunting together and raising cubs together and defending territory together. In the darkness, with 40 hyenas producing an overwhelming acoustic environment, with the scent of the predators coming from all directions simultaneously, the pride has to maintain enough internal coherence to act together. The cubs, throughout all of this, are silent or nearly so. Young cubs have a survival instinct to suppress their own sounds in situations of danger, to not call attention to themselves. Older cubs, those of perhaps 8 or 10 months, may be more capable of reading the situation and positioning themselves more effectively within the defensive group, but they are still not fighters, still not independent actors in the confrontation. They are the reason for everything the adults are doing, and they are also the primary constraint on every option the adults have. Let us think for a moment about what this night is doing to the biological futures of every individual involved. Because this is where the evolutionary logic of everything we have been describing becomes visible. For the hyena clan, 40 individuals coordinating to pressure a lion pride is a behavior that exists because it has worked before. Not every time, not necessarily this time, but often enough across the thousands of encounters that have happened between these two species in the Ngorongoro crater over decades, and across the broader range of both species over millions of years, that it has become a strategy encoded in hyena social behavior. The gene lines that produced hyenas capable of this kind of coordinated interpreter pressure have been, on average, more successful than gene lines that did not produce this capability. The clans that were large enough and organized enough to do this have, on average, held better territories and raised more surviving young than clans that were not. This is why they do it, because it works. For the lions, everything about their behavior on this night, the defensive positioning around the cubs, the males charging to break the perimeter, the females communicating and coordinating, the assessment of escape routes, is also the product of this same logic running in the opposite direction. The gene lines that produced lions capable of this defense have survived. The prides that were cohesive enough and communicative enough and strategically capable enough to get their cubs through nights like this one have left more descendants than the prides that were not. You are not watching an arbitrary conflict. You are watching millions of years of selection pressure made behavioral flesh. The night wore on. This is important to emphasize because it did not resolve quickly. This was not a situation where 40 hyenas arrived, made a show of force, and left again after 20 minutes. The accounts from researchers and guides familiar with the Ngorongoro crater region who have witnessed this kind of standoff, and while this particular event is specific, the general pattern of large clan hyena encirclement of lion prides is well documented across the literature, describe encounters that last hours, that play out across the darkness and the slow alteration of light that precedes dawn, that exhaust and test and pressure the surrounded animals through the long African night. There are moments in these standoffs where the violence erupts suddenly and overwhelmingly, where the coordinated vocal escalation of the hyena clan breaks suddenly into full charge, and the sounds become the sounds of actual contact, of biting and clawing and the yelps of animals being struck and the explosive roaring of lions in maximum aggression, and then it subsides again, injured animals pulling back, the perimeter reconstituting itself, the intensity ratcheting down before the next escalation. The injuries in these confrontations are real and serious on both sides. Hyenas die when lions connect cleanly. Lions are injured, sometimes severely, by the collective biting of multiple hyenas working simultaneously on limbs and haunches and flanks. The cost is not theoretical. It is expressed in blood and in the diminished future survival prospects of animals that come out of the night with wounds that will not fully heal, that will slow them or weaken them, or become infected in the weeks that follow. Cubs die in these encounters, not always, not inevitably, but often enough that the loss of cubs to hyenas is one of the primary sources of cub mortality in populations where both species are present at high density. A cub that breaks from the group, that is separated in the confusion of a charge and a countercharge, that falls behind when the pride attempts to move, is a cub that the hyenas will reach. The speed with which hyenas can locate and dispatch a separated cub is one of the most disturbing things about these encounters to observe. The efficiency of it, the absence of any hesitation, the way it is accomplished by multiple animals in seconds. The lionesses who fight to prevent this are fighting for something more specific than territory or food or even their own survival. They are fighting for animals they have carried and nursed and protected for months, animals that represent the future of their genetic legacy and their pride, animals that they know as individuals, that they have specific relationships with, that they have watched develop from helpless newborns into the small, stumbling, imperfectly coordinated creatures that are currently pressed against their flanks in the darkness. The intensity of a mother lion defending her cub from hyenas is not metaphorical. It is one of the most concentrated expressions of biological purpose in the natural world. Sometime before dawn, in the way that these long confrontations tend to eventually resolve, the dynamic shifted. The accounts of what causes the shift vary, because the details of what is happening in the darkness at the decisive moment are not always observable. But what tends to happen in lion-hyena standoffs that end with the lions intact is that the lions find their moment. A charge that breaks the perimeter decisively enough. A direction of escape that opens in the hyena line. A moment when the exhaustion on both sides reaches a level where the hyenas recalculate the cost of continuing against the potential gain. Adult male lions arriving. This is the other factor. In the Ngorongoro and in other landscapes where both species are present, the researchers who study lion-hyena dynamics have documented the phenomenon of male lions responding to the calls of a pride under pressure from hyenas. The roaring of a lioness under stress, the particular vocal quality of a pride being harassed, can carry for kilometers in the still air of an African night. Males who are ranging within that distance sometimes respond. They move toward the sound, and the arrival of additional adult males into a situation where a hyena clan thought it had a numerical advantage it could exploit changes the situation in ways that can be immediate and decisive. A male lion arriving at full charge into the rear of a hyena perimeter is something the perimeter cannot fully absorb while simultaneously maintaining pressure on the pride in the center. The clan has to respond to the new threat. And responding to the new threat means adjusting the perimeter, which means thinning it somewhere, which creates the opening the pride inside needs. This is the thing about collective predator-prey dynamics at this level of complexity. They are not two-body problems. They are systems with multiple actors, multiple decisions, multiple pieces of information changing simultaneously, and the outcome emerges from the interaction of all of it in ways that cannot be fully predicted from the initial conditions alone. 40 hyenas versus a lion pride does not have a predetermined result. It has a space of possible results, and where within that space the knight actually lands depends on details of individual capability and presence and the specific landscape, and 1,000 small moments that aggregate into an outcome. On this particular night, when the sun eventually came up over the rim of the Ngorongoro crater and illuminated the scene, the pride had survived. Not without cost. The details of what was lost that night, whether cubs survived or were taken, whether any adults carried serious wounds away from the encounter, are part of the specific record of that specific event and represent the granular accounting of survival in an ecosystem that does not forgive weakness. But they had survived as a pride, together, the social unit intact. The adult animals, exhausted and likely wounded in some cases, gathered in the early light with whatever cubs had made it through, and the hyena clan, having spent the night in a sustained confrontation that cost them in energy, and in whatever injuries the lions had managed to inflict, dispersed back into their own territories. This is the part that gets left out of most accounts of predator competition in the wild. The aftermath. What happens to a lion pride in the days and weeks after a night like this one? Because surviving one night of 40 hyenas is not the end of the story. It is a data point in a much longer story about whether a pride can sustain itself in a landscape where this kind of pressure is a recurring fact of existence. The Ngorongoro crater lion population has gone through periods of severe stress over the decades of its study. There have been times when disease and parasites and the extraordinary predation pressure of the crater's unusually dense hyena population pushed the lion population to very low numbers, to a point where the genetic health of the population became a concern because the founder effect, the loss of genetic diversity that comes from a very small breeding population, was visible in the genetic analysis of the animals. There have been years when cub survival rates dropped to levels that threatened the long-term viability of the prides. And then the lions recovered, not because anything external changed, not because the hyenas became less numerous or less organized, but because lions are themselves extraordinarily capable animals whose social structure and behavioral flexibility allow them to adapt to pressure in ways that are not always obvious until you look at the outcomes over years rather than nights. The female lineages of the Ngorongoro prides have persisted through decades of this pressure. The same territorial boundaries, the same core areas, occupied by the daughters and great-granddaughters of lionesses who were navigating the same pressure from the same clans generations ago. The knowledge of those territories, the understanding of where the copies are and where the hyena clan boundaries run and which areas of the crater floor offer better defensive terrain and where the water is, and which seasonal patterns of prey movement can be relied upon, all of that knowledge is carried in the females and transmitted to their daughters and their granddaughters. This is the deep continuity that a single dramatic night does not fully capture. Each terrible night is an event within a much longer story of a relationship between two species that have been co-evolving in the same landscape for millions of years. The spotted hyena has been in Africa, in something like its current form, for at least 3 million years. The lion has been there for a similar period. They have been competing for the same resources, shaping each other's behavior and social organization and brain architecture and body plan for longer than our own species has existed. What you see on any given night is not just a confrontation. It is the current expression of millions of years of mutual evolutionary pressure. The hyena's size, its endurance, its jaw strength, its social organization, its intelligence, its ability to coordinate large groups in complex collective behaviors, all of it has been shaped in part by the pressure of competing with lions. The lion's social structure, the retention of males in a pride beyond reproductive necessity, the intense female cooperation in cub defense, the specific way male lions are built, heavier and more protected than they would need to be purely for prey capture, all of it has been shaped in part by the pressure of competing with hyenas. They have made each other what they are. You cannot understand one without the other. There is a concept in evolutionary biology called the Red Queen hypothesis, named for the character in Lewis Carroll who must run as fast as she can just to stay in the same place. The Red Queen hypothesis describes the evolutionary dynamic between competing species, predator and prey or rival predators, where each adaptation in one species creates selection pressure for counter-adaptation in the other, such that both species are constantly evolving just to maintain their relative competitive positions. The relationship between lions and spotted hyenas in the Ngorongoro crater is a Red Queen relationship playing out in real time, visible in the behavior of specific individuals on specific nights in a way that connects the abstract principles of evolutionary biology to the concrete reality of 40 animals surrounding a sleeping pride in the dark. What the hyenas have is numbers and endurance and social coordination, and the ability to communicate and coordinate in darkness across a wide area. What the lions have is size and strength, and the particular advantages of their social system, specifically the retention of large males who serve as a defensive resource, and the female-centered cooperative structure that maintains territorial knowledge and cub-rearing capability across generations. Neither of these packages is simply superior to the other. They are different solutions to the problem of survival in the same landscape, and neither has yet succeeded in eliminating the other, and very probably neither will, because the presence of the other is itself part of what maintains the selection pressure that keeps each species capable. This is what a night of 40 hyenas surrounding a sleeping pride actually means when you understand all of its context. It is not simply a dramatic wildlife encounter. It is not simply evidence of hyena aggression or lion